The following video is intended for mature audiences. It contains horror elements, adult themes, and language that might not be suitable for younger viewers. The gift. Regret gnawed at me as I unwrapped that accursed gift. The sting of solitude can twist one's logic, particularly on a frost-bitten Christmas Eve, especially after my mom's departure from this world. Embers pirouetted in the fireplace, casting an eerie ballet of shadows across the rustic interior of my secluded mountain refuge. Outside, snow descended in plump, hefty clusters, weaving a quilt of silence over the landscape. A silence so profound it felt like the world was holding its breath, teetering on the precipice of some impending catastrophe. I sat alone in Dad's old leather armchair, nursing my third glass of whiskey. The bottle of Macallan 18 had been Mom's last Christmas gift to me. I'd been saving it for something special, but tonight the memories were too heavy, the silence too loud. 6 months since she'd disappeared, and every day the guilt gnawed deeper. The police report painted a sterile picture. Janet Mitchell, age 58, was last seen leaving Riverside Mall at 9:47 p.m. on June 24th. Security cameras showed her getting into her red Honda Civic. The car was found 3 days later at the old Palmer Mill, engine running, her purse on the passenger seat. The driver's door stood open as if she'd stepped out momentarily. Her phone lay in the footwell, screen cracked, one last unsent message glowing. "Something's wrong. I think it's following me. Please pick up." I'd seen that message 47 times, studying it until the words lost meaning. I'd been asleep when she called, phone on silent. 3 missed calls between 9:52 and 10:16 p.m. By the time I checked my phone the next morning, I took another swallow and the whiskey burned going down, but not enough to wash away the bitter taste of regret. Detective Martinez still called weekly, but his updates had grown shorter, his voice carrying that careful tone people use when they don't want to say what they're thinking. The case had gone cold faster than anyone expected. Nobody, no witnesses, no clues except for one detail the police kept quiet. The strange tracks in the mud near her car, not human, not animal, like something had been dragging itself along the ground. I'd moved to Mom's cabin 3 months ago, partly to be closer to the investigation, partly to escape the suffocating sympathy of city life. The cabin had always been her sanctuary, a place she'd retreat to when the world became too much. Now it was mine, though I'd barely touched her things. Her gardening gloves were still hung by the back door. Her favorite mug sat unwashed in the sink, lipstick stain marking where she'd taken her last sip of tea. The grandfather clock in the hall, another family heirloom, struck 11. Its chimes echoing through the empty rooms. Snow whispered against the windows, and the wind moaned through the pines. Perfect weather for ghosts, Mom would have said. She'd loved horror stories, especially around Christmas. Used to tell me tales of the Yule lads and Grilla, the Icelandic Christmas witch. "Winter nights are long for a reason," she'd say. "They give the dark things time to play." A knock at the door shattered my reverie. I sat frozen, glass halfway to my lips. Up here, visitors were rare even in good weather. In a snowstorm? Impossible. The nearest neighbor was 5 miles down the mountain road, and I hadn't been expecting any deliveries. I'd made sure of that, canceling every subscription, every service that might bring a stranger to my door. The knock came again. 3 sharp raps, too rhythmic to be a branch in the wind. "Hello?" I called out, hating the tremor in my voice. "Who's there?" Silence answered. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. I rose unsteadily, the whiskey making the room tilt slightly. The floorboards creaked beneath my feet, maple and oak, laid by my grandfather's hands decades ago. Each step toward the door felt heavier than the last. "Don't answer it," a small voice whispered in my head. The same voice that had urged me to check on Mom that night, the voice I'd ignored. Some doors should stay closed. But curiosity, or perhaps something darker, something that had been waiting for this moment, drew me forward. I reached for the doorknob, its brass surface ice cold against my palm. The door swung open to reveal nothing, just swirling snow and darkness, the motion sensor light casting a sickly yellow glow across the front porch. As I turned to go back inside, my foot struck something solid. A package wrapped in shimmering red paper with a golden bow. No card, no note. Just my name scrawled in spidery handwriting that seemed familiar, yet wrong somehow. Like someone trying to imitate handwriting they'd only seen once. Or like familiar hands being forced to write by something else. I brought it inside, studying it in the firelight. The box was about the size of a shoebox, surprisingly heavy for its size. A faint, metallic smell emanated from it, like copper pennies, like blood. But underneath that, another scent. Mom's perfume, Chanel No. 5, mixed with something earthier, possibly decay. "Don't open it," the voice pleaded, but the whiskey had loosened my inhibitions, and my fingers were already tearing at the paper. It came away too easily, as if eager to reveal its contents. Inside was a plain cardboard box, water-stained at the corners. Dark fluid had seeped through in places, leaving rusty coronas on the cardboard. The lid was sealed with clear packing tape, the kind Mom always kept in her craft room. I lifted the lid and peered inside. Horror. A human hand, severed at the wrist, lay nestled in red tissue paper. The skin was waxy pale, the fingernails painted a festive green, Mom's favorite shade, hollyberry bright. A gold ring adorned the third finger, a familiar ruby glinting in the firelight like an accusing eye. Mom's ring, Mom's hand. I recognized every detail. The small scar on the thumb, from when she'd cut herself gardening last spring. The slight bend in her middle finger from an old break that never healed quite right. The delicate silver bracelet I'd given her for Mother's Day, engraved with our birth dates, now tarnished and crusted with something dark. Even her wedding ring was still there, though Dad had been gone 5 years now. I recoiled, the box tumbling from my numb fingers. The hand spilled out, fingers splayed as if reaching for me. A scream built in my throat, but before it could escape, every light in the cabin went out simultaneously. Even the fire seemed to dim as if something was feeding on its light. I was plunged into darkness, save for the feeble glow of the dying embers. Scritch, scritch, scritch. The sound came from behind me, something dragging across the hardwood floor. I whirled, heart pounding, eyes straining in the gloom. The temperature in the room plummeted, and my breath clouded in the air. The whiskey glass slipped from my trembling hand, shattering on the floor. A shape, low to the ground, moving. The severed hand pulled itself toward me with grotesque, jerky movements. Fingers flexing, grasping, leaving a trail of blackened fluid that smoked slightly where it touched the floor. But that wasn't the worst part. No, the worst part was the writing. Tiny words carved into the flesh, so small I had to squint to read them. "Should have answered when I called. Should have come when I needed you. Now you'll know how it feels to be taken apart." I stumbled backward, tripping over the coffee table and crashing to the floor. Shards of the broken whiskey glass bit into my palms. The hand scuttled closer, faster now, like some obscene spider. I could see ragged tendons and bone protruding from the wrist, glistening wetly in the firelight. Each movement was accompanied by a wet, clicking sound, like someone cracking their knuckles. My phone. Where was my phone? I patted my pockets frantically and found nothing. There, on the mantel, just a few feet away, if I could only reach it. The hand leaped, cold, lifeless fingers wrapped around my throat, squeezing, choking. The silver bracelet pressed against my windpipe, burning like ice. I clawed at it, trying to pry the fingers loose, but they only tightened their grip. The engraved birth dates dug into my flesh like tiny knives. The stench of decay filled my nostrils, sweet and cloying. My vision began to blur. But through the tears, I saw something that made my blood run colder than the hand at my throat. More packages, appearing one by one on the hearth, materializing from the shadows. Red paper, gold bows, different sizes, but all wrapped the same way, all bearing my name in that twisted handwriting, all leaking dark fluid onto the hearthstones. As darkness crept in at the edges of my vision, I heard it, soft at first, then growing louder, the jingling of sleigh bells, but wrong, discordant, like broken glass in a metal drum, like screams set to music. A laugh echoed through the night, not jolly, not merry, hungry. The last thing I saw before consciousness faded was a face at the window, pale, gaunt, razor-sharp teeth bared in a rictus grin. The creature's antlers cast twisted shadows on the wall, like reaching hands, like bare winter branches ready to snatch and sever. Its eyes were black as coal, but in their depths, I saw something familiar. Mom's ruby ring glinting like a drop of blood, and behind it, deeper in those endless black eyes, I saw her face, screaming, warning, trying to tell me something I couldn't quite understand. "Merry Christmas," it mouthed, its breath frosting the glass in patterns that looked like tortured faces. "I'll be back for the rest soon, piece by piece, just like her, just like all the others who didn't answer when they were called." In the distance, sirens wailed, Detective Martinez responding to the 911 call I'd never made. But I knew he'd find nothing when he arrived. Nothing except a trail of presents leading into the woods, one for each piece of me wrapped with care by hands that used to tuck me in at night. The last thing I heard, before the hand squeezed out my final breath, was Mom's voice. Not from the creature, but from my phone on the mantel. A voicemail, playing itself on the loudspeaker. "Honey, please pick up, it's following me. Don't let it in, no matter what it wraps itself in. Don't open..." Static swallowed the rest, followed by the sound of sleigh bells. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. See you next time. Thank you for watching.